Hey there, I'm Brittany, and thanks for clicking on this YouTube video. If you're not familiar with Cape Cod Church, you can check out our website at capecodchurch.com to learn more. Otherwise, we hope that you enjoy this message in our Jesus in the Letters series, and I'll see you again at the end of the service.
So here we are. We are working our way through the letters. We've gotten through almost all of the letters of Paul. And this weekend, we come to two more books. How should I introduce this? How about this? What would it take for your brother or sister to convince you that they were God? Yeah, me too. And yet, that's exactly what James and Jude were faced with. Because it turns out Jesus had, the Bible tells us, brothers and sisters. And we know his brothers' names, James and Jude and Simon and Joseph. And two of them wrote letters or books. They put it down in writing and told us the story of Jesus and the way of Jesus. And so I thought this weekend we would take those two and put them together. The letters from Jesus' brothers. Jude was one of the four. Three of the brothers became what were essentially missionary preachers to the diaspora, right? So they were traveling and preaching, and their message was largely to those Jews who had left Jerusalem from persecution, and they were going and preaching and encouraging and teaching throughout the land. Jude was one of those, and he writes in one of the shortest books in the New Testament. We'll come to that in a minute. And then James was the other brother who sat down to write a letter that is perhaps a little bit more familiar to you, a little bit longer. And James would go on, along with Peter, to become the leaders in the church at Jerusalem, often referred to as James the Just, the first bishop, to use the term, of the church in Jerusalem. Jesus' brothers sit down to write a letter. Think about that. His brothers. I mean, really, the opportunity is incredible. I mean, two of Jesus' brothers get together and say, talk about a first century bestseller, right? A tell-all. Like, I knew him when? Like, when he was 5, you'll never guess what he did, right? We're going to sit down and we're going to get an interview with Oprah. Talk about a royal interview. I'm sorry, too soon? I couldn't help it. They had every opportunity in the world, and they didn't do it. In fact, when you read their letters, their books, there's almost nothing in it that would say, oh, here's the inside scoop, here's the lowdown, here's the dirt and the real deal. I mean, you find the real deal, but it's not maybe exactly what we expected. In fact, what James and Jude do, among other things, is they give us this intensely practical look. And along the way of telling what the way of Jesus will look like in our lives, they show us how to live it out. And in doing so, they poke at two tensions. Let's start with James, and then we'll move to Jude, and I think you'll see how they go together. James is this much-loved book because every time you read it, it's like a mirror. You can see yourself. It's just full of practical wisdom. In fact, a lot of our favorite verses, and if you've been at Cape Cod Church for a while, you know that one of my favorite passages, James chapter 4, verses 1 through 10. I mean, I go to that passage over and over and over because it's so practical. It's so easy to see these verses and see ourselves in them. James talks about things like not being hearers only, but being doers of the word. He talks about the dangers of the tongue. He talks about enduring trials and tribulation and how God carries us through all of that. He talks about favoritism. You see, in many ways, James is offering us a look, a letter, a book on how to. By the way, this idea of how to, the book of James and what we call how to preaching, which, to be full confession, I love, gets dismissed. The intellectual elite want to dismiss it. In fact, historically, some intellectual elite have sort of dismissed James because it doesn't get into, like Paul's theology. I just want to say something about that before I move on, because there's something about how-to preaching that is powerful, right? There's something that's very, very comfortable about intellectual, informational preaching that avoids the tension of application and persuasion. See, if you can avoid the tension of application and persuasion, I can just fill my head and shine my ego, and here we go. But there's something about how-to that says, no. And this is what James is doing. This is what it looks like. This is how you live it out. It's one thing to know it. It's another thing to do it. This is what it looks like. In fact, in one of those great moments where James is just kind of dialing into this, he says something that begins to poke at this first tension. Let me read it to you. In James chapter 2, we're going to pick up in verse 14. He says, "What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but don't show it by your actions?" I mean, what good is it? Like you got all this knowledge. You say you know what's right to do. You say you know the truth and you know the scriptures. But what good is it if you have faith, but you don't show it by your own actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Whoa. I mean, James is getting serious. He says, really? Because he's like questioning their salvation, right? Whoa, can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, goodbye, have a good day, stay warm, eat well. But then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? So you see, now he's about to dial it in, get ready. You see, faith by itself isn't enough unless it produces good deeds. It is dead and useless. Now, someone may argue, he says next, some people have faith and others have good deeds. He said, nice try. I'll show you my faith by my good deeds. You say you have faith, for you believe that there is one God. Good for you. Even the demons believe this. He said, that's all head knowledge. Even the demons, he says, even the devil knows that's true, and they tremble in terror. You know what James is saying here? He's going, yeah, I hear you talking, blah, 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 blah. Show me what you do. Show me how you live. Now, James is about to put a fine point on it. In fact, if we first turn down to verse 24, I want to poke at the tension. Here's the tension. In verse 24, he says famously, so you see, we are shown to be right with God by what we do, not by faith alone. Ooh. See, some of you, if you're paying attention, you're reading that going, That's a tough verse, because I'm not exactly sure what to do with that, Pastor. I've been listening to you preach for a while, and that's not exactly... that feels like it's in tension, because it does. It feels like it's in tension with a lot of what Paul said, because Paul talked a lot about not works alone, not what we do, but what we believe. Didn't Paul? Oh, yeah, he did. Actually, so let me show you the tension. Chapter 3, verse 27 of Romans, his most famous book. picking up just a few verses, Paul says this, "Can we boast then that we have done anything to be accepted by God? No, because our acquittal is not based on obeying the law. It's based on faith." What? Whoa. What gives here? He's saying like the opposite of James. So we are made right with God through faith and not by obeying the law, not by keeping the rules? After all, is God the God of the Jews only? Isn't he also the God of the Gentiles? Of course he is. So we're like, whoa, like James and Paul seem to be, James is all like, hey, it's what you do and how you live. And then Paul comes along and says, no. It's faith alone. And if we're not careful, we kind of see these things in tension and contrast, and we miss that they're actually saying the same thing to two different audiences. They're teaching one truth to two audiences. You know how you do that, right? You will say different things to different audiences. If you've got a couple of kids, then you might have one kid that's in school and you're like, hey, stop socializing. Stop it. And then you have another kid, you're like, please socialize. Please, find a friend, text somebody, do it during school, I don't care, get a social media app. Wouldn't you love to have Instagram or Snapchat or whatever it is? Like, do something, right? Because you got one kid that's over here and they're struggling because they can't turn it off. And you've got another kid over here that just can't turn it on. And so you've got different messages. And that's sort of what's happening here with James and Paul. They're speaking to two different audiences. Paul is speaking to people who wanted to tell the Gentiles that they had to be Jews, that they had to keep all the rules and laws. We saw that a few weeks ago. We opened up the book of Galatians and we talked about how they wanted to turn the Gentiles into Jews, and it started with circumcision and then it kept on with keeping all the rules of the Torah. And Paul's like, no. You're not saved by doing all those things. You're saved by faith in Jesus Christ. That's how God designed it. And James is actually saying the same thing, but he is speaking to a different audience. He's speaking to an audience that was trying to turn faith into some kind of intellectual assent. They were trying to separate faith from following. Like truth and transformation didn't go together. He's like, no. These two things, they go together. They are literally one message in both of these passages. And that one message is that God saves us through faith in Jesus Christ so that we can live our lives fully for him. He saves us so that, not by that. Are you getting the difference? He saves us so that we can live fully for him. He doesn't save us by living fully for him. He saves us by faith in Jesus Christ through what he's already done so that we can live our lives fully for him. He doesn't save us by living fully for him. He saves us so that we can live fully for them. But James is unpacking this tension. And what he's doing is he's trying to say, hey, you can't separate truth and transformation. You can't pull those things apart. You can't separate faith and following. They go together, faith and works, faith and living. They go together like life and breathing. Those two things can't be separated, life and breathing. Because if you're alive, breathing isn't what makes you a human being. It's not what brought you into this world. It's not what created you, but it's what every living person does. And when you stop doing it, it's a sign you're not alive. I was reading an article and I saw there was this app, it was a sleep app. And I was kind of curious, and I was fascinated by the technology. It like uses sonar. You like lay it next to your bed, and it sends out a signal, and it can measure how you sleep. And it was free. And what really caught me is it gave you a score. I love scores, right? Because I'm competitive. I'm like, I wonder what my score would be. I wonder how I would do it. Like, I want a number. There's a number. You get a number. So I got it, and I set it up. And I put it there in the first night, and I knew I was being judged, and I couldn't sleep. It was the worst thing. Like, oh, it was like there on my nightstand. I'm like, I'm not having a good night's sleep. I can tell I'm not having a good night's sleep. I'm tossing and I'm turning and I'm going to get a bad score. And I did. I got like a 56. It was like high school all over again for me. I'm like, So then the next day I was super tired because I got a 56 the night before. And I went to sleep, and man, I slept like a baby. The first night, true story, has nothing to do with the message. First night, I was away on a short trip, and I slept badly, and I got home, and I told Tam that I slept badly, and we decided it's because I wasn't with her. She agreed. And the next night when I was with her, I slept like a baby. So anyway, nothing to do with the message. It gives you a score, right? The next night, I got like a 93. I was like so proud. But when it does, it like breaks it in. It like has like, deep sleep and REM sleep, but it has like three major things. And one of them, this is surprising me, one of them is breathing. It measures your breathing. Like it says like this is an average. Like you should be in here. And thankfully, it's the one thing I've scored well on every night, because I suspect if you stop that, your score is 0. It's not a good night at all. Like something went wrong, because breathing is a sign that we're alive. It's not the thing that brought us into the world. It's not the thing that makes us human, but it's what we do because we are alive. And what James is saying here is, listen, because you have been transformed by the power of God through Jesus Christ and his Holy Spirit living in you, it makes you want to breathe. It makes you want to live your life for him. There's just something in you that's drawn to living fully for him. And you can't separate out these things one from another. They go together, living and breathing, faith and following, truth and transformation, faith and living fully for him. We are called, we are pulled, we are led to live like this. And James is just speaking to those who would try and separate out those things as though you could pick one or the other. You see how practical he's getting. You see how deep he's going. He's not just polishing our intellectual egos. He's going right to where we live and saying, how you doing? And Jude must have picked this up. It must have been something about living with Jesus, because Jude doesn't travel far from this. Jude picks up the same sort of idea, this idea of how we live out our lives, but he goes at a different place. Let me jump forward to the book of Jude. We pick up in Jude chapter 1. It says, this letter is from Jude. That's how we know it's from Jude. By the way, interestingly enough, historically, Jude's actually, like in the translation, Jude's name in Greek is Judas, and in Hebrew is Judah. So Judah, we have the Old Testament tribe of Judah, the Lion of Judah, the lineage of David, and then Judas. Everybody knows who Judas is. So historically, we kind of call him Jude. I sort of like that. It doesn't confuse us with the Old Testament tribe, and it kind of keeps them a little bit separate. I mean, like, nobody ever wanted to name their kid Judas after that, and so we said, yeah, let's not confuse these two. We called him Jude. Just a little historical tidbit in case you were curious. So we're going to call him Jude. So this letter is from Jude, a slave of Jesus Christ and a brother of James. It's interesting here, he does not pull the Jesus card. Like, a brother of Jesus. Jesus had been dead probably for close to 30 years by the time he's written this. James is the leader in the church at Jerusalem. And he says, I'm a brother of James. I am writing to all of you who have been called by God the Father, who loves you and keeps you safe in the care of Jesus Christ. May God give you more and more mercy, peace, and love. Now, he shifts. Watch this. He says, dear friends, he got all the kind of the nice stuff out of the way. He goes, I had been eagerly planning to write you about the salvation we share. He goes, man, I was getting ready. I was sitting down. I was going to write a letter about the gospel and about the salvation that we share and what Jesus Christ has done and how it's transformed our life, but I'm not. But now, he says, I find I must write about something else. urging you to defend the faith that God has entrusted once for all time to his holy people. Then he goes on to explain what he means. He says, I say this because some ungodly people have wormed their way into your churches, saying that God's marvelous grace allows us to live immoral lives. Same thing, same theme, different take. He said, some people have wormed their way into the church and they are teaching you by their lives that God's marvelous grace that saved you and set you free actually means that you can live an immoral life just like everyone else in the world around you. He said the condemnation of such people was recorded long ago, for they have denied our only Master and Lord, Jesus Christ. He says, are you kidding me? They're acting like because of the grace of Jesus Christ has forgiven you freely, you can just go on living any immoral life that you want. He would go on to call them, he calls them a couple of things, but my favorite is he calls them rainless clouds. Personally, I like rainless clouds because I've got a water faucet and I can get water wherever I want. But back then, rainless clouds were clouds that promised relief but didn't deliver. He said, these are leaders that are promising you relief, grace, freedom, but they can't deliver because their lives are a joke. They say that this grace lets you do whatever you want. They're missing that grace gives you liberty, not license. He's poking at this tension between liberty and license. He's saying he sets you free from that, not set you free to do more of that. My goodness, is this a relevant challenge for our day where immorality seems like it can find new and deeper levels almost every day. I say something here often, and I'm going to keep saying it, but I want you to just listen to it. I often say this. I often say, God loves you. God meets you. God saves you right where you're at. That's the truth. I'm going to keep saying it. But that grace is also a tightrope because it's easy to infer that God meets me right where I'm at and doesn't want any more for me. No, God's grace draws us in. He knocks at the door of our heart. And when we let him in, he comes in and he transforms us from the inside out. He puts something in us, in our heart, that beats for him, that just wants to live for him, that's just drawn to living for him. Everything, there's just a part of us that's just drawn to him. And when we're far away from him, we feel conviction, like something's not right in here because I'm not right with God. And it's the conviction of the Holy Spirit, because beating inside of us is the Spirit of Jesus Christ. The Holy Spirit is calling us, leading us, inviting us to live a different life. And here's the truth. Sometimes, going back to our illustration of breathing, sometimes we're able to hold our moral breath. I'm just going to do what I want to do. I don't care. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm holding my moral breath. How long can you hold your breath for? No, really, how long? I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was talking about holding your breath, and they did this thing. It was right on the podcast. So I said, we're going to hold our breath for 90 seconds. Don't do it right now, because that's scary. Well, I mean, if you want to, you can try. You can just take a breath. Oh, actually, let all your air out and then hold your breath. Do it right. Don't faint or something. Don't that would be bad. Like online, if you're driving, don't try this. Just go ahead. Just breathe out and then just hold your breath. I'll time it. Let's see here. There we go. You're doing it? 5 seconds is no big deal. We're like holding our moral breath. I'm going to do my own thing. But then, something starts happening. See, when you're holding your breath, your body's not getting the normal oxygen it's used to. So here's what's happening. Your heart starts beating. It's looking for oxygen. And your heart starts telling your head, it's probably doing it right now because we're 30 seconds in, 35 seconds. It's telling you, hey, dummy, breathe. Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stop it. Breathe. You can't, you're not made for this. Really? You think you can hold your breath for a minute? Come on. Breathe. That's your heart speaking to your head. It's hammering. In fact, if you were quiet and I weren't talking, you could probably hear. You could hear your heart beating. You could listen for it, and it will feel like a hammer in your chest. Because we've been 1 minute and 10 seconds now. In your heart, go ahead and breathe. If you've stopped breathing, start, okay? I just want everybody, wherever you're at, I don't want to be a cause of any medical emergencies. See what was happening? Your heart was saying, hey. Start breathing. You were made for more than this. And when you heard Jesus Christ knocking at the door of your heart, as it says in Revelation, and you answered that call and he came to live in your heart, he put something in you that beats for him. And every once in a while, we just get kind of walking our own way, doing our own thing. And we're holding our moral, spiritual breath. And if you have the Spirit living in you, what James and Jude are saying is that there's a part of you that beats for Jesus, and there's a part of you that is calling out for something different. And here's what I found. If the first time you can hold your breath for 30 seconds and you do it for a week or two, you can get up to 60 seconds. You can get up to 1.5 minutes. Some of you can get up to longer than that. And I found spiritually you can do the same. You can get further and further and further away until you're not hearing that beating as much, but it's still there. There's that calling that's saying, hey, you were made for more than that. You see, when you met Jesus, his Spirit came to dwell in you. And it beats to follow him. I want to say something, and I'm not being the least bit unkind. If you've never experienced that, if you've never met Jesus in such a profound way that your heart was changed, and your want to and your desire was changed. I'm not being unkind. I just want to say this. You haven't met Jesus. He puts something in you that just beats for him. I'm not saying he makes you perfect. My goodness, we're all examples of that. But there's something in us that just beats for him. And if that's not there, listen, Jude knows what he's talking about. Jude knows. Because here's the thing, Jude and James and Joseph and Simon, they didn't believe either. They grew up with Jesus. They weren't buying it. Not a one of them were his disciples. Jesus had to go down to the fishing docks and get a bunch of fishermen. His own brothers wouldn't follow him. You know when they followed him? It says that after the resurrection, Jesus met with James and all of the others. Whew. Then they were like, oh, brother, we had no idea. And they were forever changed. I'm just saying there's a moment you go from knowing about Jesus to knowing Jesus. There's a moment of spiritual transformation that happens just like that. And it's like you heard the knocking at your heart. And you open that door and he comes to dwell inside of you and he changes you forever. And I guess what I'm saying here this morning is maybe that's you. Maybe you're like Jude and you're like James, like you know this story. Maybe you've been in church, maybe this church, I don't know, a long time, but you've never met Jesus in that way. You haven't. He's knocking. He's saying, hey, this isn't a game. This isn't words. This isn't like something that happens in your head. I need you to let me in and trust me once and for all as your Savior. And when you do that, my Spirit will come and dwell in you, and it will beat for me. Maybe you're listening and you hear knocking. Bible says, "Behold, if any man hear me knock and open the door and let me in, I will come in." I've always loved that verse. I will come in. Maybe that's you. Maybe you want to let him in this morning. Would you bow with me? Heads are bowed or eyes are closed. A quiet moment, and maybe this is your moment to open that door, to, in the quiet of the seat where you're sitting here in this room or online, where you're just listening, that you would take that moment, that place, and you would simply pray and let him in. Our heads bowed, our eyes closed. Between you and God, you pray something like this: Dear God, you know me and you know everything about me. I can't hide a single fault, a single failing. Every sin I've ever committed or ever will commit is in front of you, and your grace has forgiven me. I accept your grace and your mercy in Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, I believe you died on the cross for me. And I trust in your death and your resurrection for my everything. Come and dwell in my heart, in my life. I want to live my life fully for you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for joining us today. If you made a faith decision today, or you'd just like someone to pray with you, send us an email to office@capecodchurch.com, and a member of our team will follow up with you personally. Also, if you'd like to give to support the mission of Cape Cod Church, you can do that easily on our website, capecodchurch.com, by clicking the Give button. And one more thing, since you stayed all the way to the end. If you thought of a friend today who could benefit from this message, we hope that you'll share it with them. You can do that easily by social media, email, or via text. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you soon.